There is one thing baseball does not forgive. Not a bad pitch. Not a missed catch. Not even a losing streak that stretches deep into a long, brutal season. What baseball does not forgive, what the game itself seems to reject like a foreign body, is dishonesty. And on this night, inside Dodger Stadium, dishonesty walked onto the field wearing a black uniform and a chest protector. It raised its right hand with complete confidence. It called strike 3 on a pitch that had no business being called a strike. And the moment it did, something snapped. Not just in the stadium. Not just in the dugout. Inside Shohei Ohtani himself. The man who had never once, not in Japan, not in Anaheim, not in Los Angeles, publicly lost his composure at an umpire's call. The man who took bad calls the way a mountain takes wind. Quietly. Unmoved. Without drama. That man picked up his bat. And he slammed it. The sound echoed through Dodger Stadium like a thunderclap. And before that night was over, 2 umpires would leave that field without a job, without a license, and without an answer good enough to explain what they had done. To understand the full weight of what happened in the 3rd inning, you first have to understand what this game meant. This was not a casual mid-season contest. This was not the kind of game that gets forgotten by morning. The standings were tight. The pressure was real. Every win and every loss at this point of the season carried the kind of consequences that could define an entire year. The Dodgers needed this game. And when the Dodgers need a game, they look to one man above everyone else. Shohei Ohtani. He is not a player you describe with numbers alone. His ERA, his home run count, his batting average, those tell you something, but they don't tell you everything. What they don't tell you is what it feels like to watch him walk to the plate. What they don't tell you is how the entire energy of a stadium shifts the moment he picks up a bat and steps into the box. He is the reason 50,000 people sat in those seats that night. He is the reason cameras were rolling from every angle. He is the reason this game mattered beyond the standings. And in the 3rd inning, 2 umpires decided, whether through incompetence or something far darker, to make a call that had no place in a game this important. The count was 2-2. Ohtani had already worked the at-bat carefully. He had fouled off a sharp slider. He had let a high fastball go by without flinching. His eyes were locked. His stance was clean. He was in complete control of everything he could control. The pitcher wound up. The pitch came in. It was outside. Not borderline. Not close enough to argue from a distance. It was a pitch that missed the strike zone by a margin so clear that broadcasters in the press box caught it instantly. Cameras caught it instantly. Fans sitting in the upper deck caught it instantly. Everyone in that stadium saw it. Except apparently, the home plate umpire. His right hand went up. Strike 3. For 1 full second, nothing moved. The kind of silence that doesn't feel like quiet, it feels like pressure. It feels like the moment before something breaks. And then it broke. The first sound came from the Dodgers dugout. Not words. Just noise. Raw, unfiltered noise. Players who had been sitting calmly on the bench were suddenly on their feet. Hands gripping the railing. Voices rising above each other. Then the crowd found its voice. 50,000 people booing in unison is not a sound you forget. It doesn't sound like disagreement. It sounds like thunder that doesn't stop. It fills every corner of the stadium. It presses down on the field. It makes the air itself feel different. And in the middle of all of it stood Shohei Ohtani. Still. For just a moment, completely still. Those who were watching closely said his jaw tightened first. Then his grip on the bat changed. His knuckles went white. His eyes moved from the strike zone to the umpire slowly, the way a man looks at something he cannot believe he is actually seeing. And then Ohtani did something nobody in that stadium had ever seen him do before. He raised the bat. And he slammed it into the ground. The crack of the bat hitting the dirt was sharp enough to cut through the noise of the crowd. It wasn't a gentle toss. It wasn't a frustrated drop. It was a deliberate, controlled act of anger from a man who had spent years mastering the art of showing none. He turned toward the umpire. 3 words. Clear enough to be read on every camera in the building. Review that footage. Not a curse. Not a personal attack. Not the kind of outburst that gets replayed for its drama. It was a demand. Calm in delivery but burning underneath. The demand of a man who knew exactly what had just happened and wanted the entire world to know it too. Dave Roberts was out of the dugout before the echo of the bat hitting the ground had finished traveling through the stadium. He didn't run. Managers don't run in moments like this. Running turns a protest into a spectacle. Roberts walked with the kind of purpose that told everyone watching exactly how serious this was. He stepped between Ohtani and the home plate umpire. His hands were out. His voice was measured, but there was nothing calm underneath it. He had watched the same pitch everyone else had watched. He had seen the same mistake. And now he was standing on the field doing the only thing a manager can do when his best player has just been robbed in a moment that could change the entire tone of a game. He pleaded. Not for sympathy. Not for a reversed call. Managers' no calls don't get reversed on a protest. He pleaded for acknowledgement. He pleaded for the umpire to look him in the eye and show some recognition of what had just happened. The umpire did not. Instead, the second umpire, the one stationed near first base, began walking toward home plate. Whether to support his colleague or to defuse the situation, it didn't matter. Because what he said when he arrived made everything worse. The details of the exchange were captured on multiple microphones around the field. Roberts' voice rose slightly. Still controlled. But slightly. That was enough. Both managers, both umpires, knew what came next. The thumb came out. First for Roberts. The crowd's response was instantaneous and enormous. Not because ejecting a manager is unusual, it happens. But because of everything that led to this moment. Because of the call that started it. Because of Ohtani's bat on the ground. Because of 3 words that were still hanging in the air above the stadium. Then came the second ejection. A Dodgers coach who had followed Roberts onto the field found himself on the wrong end of the same thumb. 2 ejections in the space of 90 seconds. The kind of scene that gets talked about for weeks in dugouts across the league. But the ejections on the field were only the beginning of the story. The press conference room felt different that night. There was a tension in it that had nothing to do with the final score. Reporters who had covered the Dodgers for years sat in their seats with the particular alertness of people who know they are about to hear something that matters. Roberts entered. His jaw was still set. The fire from the field had not fully left his eyes, though he carried himself with the composure of a man who understood that the cameras were still rolling and every word would be measured. A reporter asked the first question almost immediately. What happened out there in the 3rd inning? Roberts placed both hands flat on the table in front of him. He looked at the reporter for a moment before he answered. What happened, he said slowly, is that the best player in baseball was called out on a pitch that missed the zone. And I think everyone in that building, and everyone watching at home, saw exactly what we saw. He paused. I don't think I need to say anything more than that. But the room wasn't finished. Another reporter leaned forward and asked about Ohtani. About the bat. About the 3 words. About a moment that nobody who was inside that stadium would easily forget. Roberts allowed himself the smallest exhale. Shohei is the most composed person I have ever managed. When you see him react the way he reacted tonight, that tells you everything you need to know about what kind of call that was. The room was very quiet for a moment after that. What nobody in that press conference room knew yet, what wouldn't become public until later that night, was that the story wasn't over. MLB had been watching. The footage that Ohtani had demanded be reviewed had already been reviewed. By multiple officials. In real time and in slow motion. From every available camera angle. The conclusion was not complicated. The conclusion was not close. The call was wrong. Not borderline wrong. Not understandable in the moment wrong. Wrong in a way that raised questions that went beyond a single missed pitch. By the time the stadium had emptied, by the time the last reporters had filed their stories and the last lights in the Dodgers clubhouse had gone dark, the decision had already been made at the league level. Both umpires were ejected from that game. Both umpires were stripped of their umpiring licenses. It was the kind of consequence that almost never happens in professional baseball. The kind of consequence that signals clearly, to every umpire, in every ballpark, across the entire league, that certain calls carry a weight that cannot be ignored. He sat in front of the microphone with the stillness he always carries. The bat was long gone. The anger had settled back into whatever place inside him it normally lives. A reporter asked him gently, had he ever done that before? Had he ever reacted that way at an umpire's call? Ohtani was quiet for a moment. Then he shook his head slightly. No, he said simply. Another reporter asked what went through his mind in that moment. When the call came. When the hand went up. He didn't answer immediately. He looked at the table. Then back up. I just wanted them to look at the footage, he said. That's all I wanted. 3 words in the heat of the moment. 3 words that turned out to be exactly right. Because they looked at the footage. And the footage told the truth that the umpire's raised hand could not. There are calls in baseball that get forgotten by the next morning. This was not one of them. This was the night Shohei Ohtani, the most composed, the most disciplined, the most quietly controlled player in the game, showed the world what it looks like when patience finally reaches its limit. This was the night a bat hit the ground and an entire stadium understood exactly why. This was the night 2 umpires walked into a ballpark with careers and walked out without them. And somewhere in the league offices, in a room full of monitors showing footage from every angle, the truth was already sitting there waiting. Ohtani had asked them to look. They looked. And baseball, for once, got it right.